knock loose. White dive on it.
This is twice now the Celtics have been first to the floor. They try to save with Horford. Unbelievable.
Boston first to the floor. So good.
Brown fakes, fires up the three. Bang! Tatum dives on the floor. Everybody dives. Jaylen Brown with the flush. Blocked by Porzingis. He's doing it all. Tatum spinning, driving, layup. Got it. Washington drives. Blocked by White. Oh, what a block from Derek White.
Welcome in, first to the floor. Thank you for joining us. Hope you're doing well. Ben Vallis here, along with Wayne Spooney. And Spooney, it's not great right now. Not great right now at all. How you doing?
I'm doing good. I was pretty pissed off after the game last night when we did it. I was trying to put that more politely, but there's no other way to phrase it. When Jake and I did instant reactions, I've watched back some possessions. The defense was an abomination, but I think it's fixable. So I'm feeling a lot better, a lot more optimistic today. I'm ready to spread some optimism for the folks. So how are you, Ben? It's been a while.
I think I'm optimism fairy, ready to sprinkle some optimism dust around the place. Very much needed. And it's always in the 7 years of doing this pod. We're almost up on our 7-year birthday now, coming up next month. It's always been our responsibility among the Celtics podosphere to spread the good vibes, to spread the optimism where it's been dried up everywhere else, which seems to be the case right now. So we'll do our best while also just like completely owning and acknowledging the fact that like things kind of suck right now, which is fine. And it's like therapeutic and cathartic. We say this every time to get it out there and just like put it out there, identify it, and like know your enemy and just talk about it. So tonight, the player slump rankings. We are amidst a painful team slump made up of various individual players and player slumps rather. Who is the slumpiest? We're going to find out via our slump rankings. Then a little bit later, team fundamentals rankings or poor execution rankings, whatever you want to call it, sort of more re-ranking sort of holistically what's wrong with the Celtics, more rankings. We're ranking all the little things that the Celtics are doing wrong right now. And essentially, like I said, we're looking to understand in detail everything the Celtics are doing wrong, know your enemy, study it, and maybe, just maybe, we'll exercise some demons in the process. But very quickly, Spoonie, a quick recap of the Raptors loss. I think we'll get to a lot of this stuff like organically in the slump ranking. So like maybe like literally 1 to 2 minutes here, but blown out by the Raptors. I think last time we talked, Spoonie, we had just blown out the Raptors 125 to 71.
Better days.
Here we are potting again. The next time the two of us have met up on the podcast here, post Raptors again, but a completely different story. Thoughts on this one, Spoons?
Yeah, I think ultimately, I said last night I thought the offensive process was pretty good, and I stand by that. And I looked back at Jaylen Brown's, especially his fourth quarter possessions, and he had one or two drives that I thought were ill-advised, but otherwise he had an amazing pass to Pritchard in the corner. Pritchard misses a wide-open three. He gets all the way downhill, misses a 4-foot layup, misses another layup. KP's there for the tip-in. He misses the tip-in. And it's just like, man, they're just in their head or they're pressing, and like the stuff that they usually make is just not going in right now. So I stand by that take. I think offensively everything was fine. The Raptors, for their faults, are a horrible offensive team, but they have good defensive players. Like I'm pretty low on Scotty Barnes' defense compared to consensus, but he's still a good defensive player. Pirtle's great rim protector. They got like Jamal Shed is a pesky defender. Like he's really solid. Agbaji's a really good wing defender. So like the fact that the offensive process was good against the Raptors is a positive sign. The defense, I think I feel worse about it after watching that. But so many of the mistakes and the lack of like mental execution and executing the game plan, that is all so fixable. And, like, they just had a great defensive stretch. That's what's bizarre. Like, in our last 7 games since January 1, we led the NBA in rim protection defense, like 52 or 53%, which is elite. And then the Raptors come to town, and Jakob Poeltl's hitting 7-foot push shots and shit like that. So I think a lot of it last night was, like, we did not pressure the ball high enough. We did not make their ball handlers uncomfortable. But there was, like, 5 or 6 layups the Raptors made where I'm just like, that 9 times out of 10, that's not going in. And it changes the tenor of the game if those don't go down.
Yeah, it's so uncharacteristic from our guys. I think that the sad, potentially panicky aspect, what that we're here to talk about, is like it's becoming somewhat characteristic this season of them to go too hard on closeouts, which allows their ball handlers to crack our perimeter defense, which causes us to overhelp, which causes us to then get in rotation, which causes wide open corner threes or wide open layups at the bucket. Like it has this sort of cascading flow on effect. And maybe I want to cork it there because I think we're going to unpack it all. I will say in this one, like, KP is definitely like maybe, 85% of the way back individually, it seems, from a physical standpoint. He looks like he has like a more solid base. I'm becoming less worried and freaked out every time his feet leave the floor. And like last night, had quite a few like stuffs at the rim, had those line drive threes, individually looking very good. So I think 85%, back in that sense. Integration wise, like from a team perspective, 50% of the way back. I think there's a lot of issues which we'll get into with these slump rankings about KP specifically being out there. Some of the spacing or lack thereof, it just feels like there's a clumsy arrangement of players spread across the court, which again is like atypical based on what we got used to last year. Again, that's something that's fixable. It's something they'll work out over time with reps, but it is jarring to see that just based on how perfect the product was like less than a year ago in June, essentially. So a little bit disturbing, but I think maybe we could leave the Raptors game there, given you guys did a pretty good job recapping that yesterday on our instant reactions. But let's start with the slump rankings. I'll throw over to you. I threw 4 players into the slump rankings. I couldn't bring myself to even include 5 players in the top 5 slumpiest players on the Celtics. But Spoonie, you've added in number 5 to our run sheet today. So I'll throw over to you to kick off our slump rankings.
Yeah, sophomore year, college, wasn't really taking care of myself. It had been it was like 7-8 months, but number 5, Jason Tatum. And I actually think for the most part, Tatum's playing really well. He was not amazing last night, but they were throwing a lot of bodies at him. He was moving the ball. The primary thing he is slumping at is finishing at the rim right now. So he's at 67.1% for the season, which includes the last 10 games where he's been quite bad at less than 5 feet. He's at 60% at less than 5 feet this year, and he was up over 70 for most of this season before the last 10 games. So that's a pretty big drop off. My guess is it's probably just variance for the most part. Hey, sometimes you just don't get those things to drop. I feel like he's missed a good amount of layups that we are used to seeing him make. He had a couple last night for sure. And then I think his help defense, which he is absolutely elite at when he is locked in, has been pretty floaty. It was floaty last night. There's a lot of plays where the Raptors got to the rim, and it's because Tatum was not quick enough to help inside, or he is very guilty of the shitty closeouts where the half, I'm running hard and then I ran right by you and now somebody's coming downhill. So I would say Tatum is number 5 for me. I don't think this is a particularly big slump for him to crawl out of, but those are 2 things that are very important to who he is as a basketball player. And he's just not doing either of them at a particularly high level right now.
Yeah, it's tough because he was getting to the rim with relative ease to try and close the game last night and making the right play, kicking out to maybe higher degree slump lords, which we'll get to, kicking out to open shooters in the corners and on the wings who just aren't able to knock them down at the moment. But yeah, he's probably a worthwhile inclusion into these rankings because in a sense, it might be up to JT to lead the team out of their collective and overall slump. And sometimes you just need a momentum shifting play or quarter, a thunderous dunk. In this case, I think a really solid defensive stance would be really helpful in leading by example and getting this team out of the trenches here. But yeah, I think given he's the best player on the team and the team overall is slumping, you got to kind of put Tatum in there. So number 5. Number 4, this guy's definitely looking better gradually, but Sam Hauser, because it's just not there yet. He's not all the way back. And I think if we were doing this in the first 2 weeks of the season, Spoonie, he'd probably be ranked number 1, slumpiest player. But he has sort of gradually clawed his way back. Last night, I thought defensively, he was one of the better looking, more active players in terms of the crispness of his switches and his quick-footedness and just like staying in front of his guy, which is something we came to get used to last year, but haven't seen a lot of it from Sammy Buckets this year. But like the shot's not consistent. He's just not that like wet shooter off the bench that we kind of need to stay deadly as a team. Like we're looking for ways to stay afloat in the non-JT minutes. And we had so many ways of doing that last year. A huge part of that was Sammy Buckets. Like last year, 6th, 7th guy in the rotation. Now, defensively, it's like I said, it's looking back-ish, but the shot's just not there. So I'm classifying it as a slump, Spoonie.
Yeah, he's way down. Well, way down's a little strong. He shot 45% on wide open threes last year, and he had 3.1 a game. He's at 41% on them, but only at 2.2 a game.
Right.
So
okay.
Not only his volume has dropped by 1, and he's shooting them less accurately. So that has a pretty big impact when like your primary offensive value is making open shots. And it's because teams are closing out on him harder. They're limiting, when you take 7 shots, going from 3 wide open ones to 2 wide open ones is a pretty damn big percentage of the offensive possessions you use. So, but to me, there's these type of shots where in years past when Hauser took them, I knew they were going in. I don't know how to describe it. It was like if he got a clean catch in the shooting pocket and nobody was like on him, it was like felt like it always went in. And this year, like last night, he must have missed 2 or 3 wide open threes that, man, we really needed at those points in the game. And I wonder if it's confidence. I wonder if it's just working back from your injury. I wonder if it's like teams are defending him differently. They're making him more uncomfortable. He's not getting as many wide open looks, so he needs to spread his wings a little bit offensively. Samelo shit. Yeah. But he does not look particularly comfortable with the handle, and he never has. I mean, that's never been his game. But when he's coming off movement, I think we just need more of like him coming off movement and making plays off of movement, because he is smart. Like if he comes off a pin down and the guy who set it rolls, he'll hit him if he's open. So I think just for the team wide, little more movement, little more deliberate ways to attack instead of just kind of like high screen and roll, pick up basketball like we've been playing. And Hauser has definitely he's been a victim of sort of some of the offensive execution stuff we've seen from the Celtics.
Yeah, even in the Knicks game, like opening night, he was like attacking closeouts really well and either pulling up for that midi, and the immediate reaction was, look, he's figured it out. Like he's assessed like the film and himself over the offseason and like arrived at the new season with a plan of how to adjust if teams are like closing out on him way harder than they were last season. Pull up midi, or if the help comes, like get rid of the ball, get it to the big inside, or dish it out to the corner. Like he had all these counter moves. Then he goes out with the back injury. Then he's kind of in and out of the lineup sporadically over the next few weeks and just hasn't really found his footing yet. I think there were more good signs with him individually last night than poor ones. So hopefully he's on his way out of this top 5 slump rankings. But we need more from Sammy Buckets, absolutely, for this team to be close to what it was last year. Number 3. This pains me to say, and for the next 3 guys, yeah, I know. We'll just call it now, Spoonie. For the next 3 guys, yeah. This has been fun. For the next 3 players, I think we're going to focus more on the last 10 games because we're looking at like current in the moment slumps rather than just like they've had a bad season. Number 3, Al Horford, 36% from the floor. Last 10 games, 28% from 3 for a guy who at 38 years old is essentially like a 3-and-D big, I would say is his role. He had a couple of angry dad post-ups last night, which like made me super happy, where he like bodied people from basically the 3-point line all the way down to the hoop and got us a few emergency buckets, daddy's home style buckets. But, defensively, there's a bit of a drop off where throughout the season, his defensive field goal percentage was much lower. So he was holding opposition players to a lower defensive field goal percentage than they are in the last 10 games. So guys are scoring on him at a higher rate than they have been earlier in this season. Less than 6 feet, opponents are shooting 2.9% better when guarded by Al Horford in the last 10 games. So it's a bit of a drop off for Al Horford. There's some numbers there to support that. I think very much meets the eye test as well. He was certainly the recipient of some pretty solid kick out 3-point shooting opportunities, courtesy of Jason Tatum last night. I think Al actually got, more to go than the rest of the team last night. But again, it's just, you guys talk about it all the time with Jake. Like, you know it when you see it, and it's just not there with Al right now.
Yeah, and I think defensively, I'm not concerned about Al long term, but right now he's just not playing particularly well defensively. And there's no reason for us to consistently ask Al to be put on an island in isolation against guards or wings. Like, there's just no need for us to do that and make him put those miles on. But that is part of what made him so elite and so valuable for so long, is that he could do that. So when you're kind of protecting him from having to do that, it starts to limit his efficacy on the defensive end. And yeah, so he's at 0.6 defensive field goal percentage for the season difference. So guys shoot 0.6% better when guarded by Al than they normally would at less than 6 feet. You said it, 2.9 better around the rim when guarded by Al. But in the playoffs last year, it was -11. So, like, Al is a playoff guy, but there is like a push and a pull. There's a balance. Like, you can't give this little of rim protection. Like, 2.9% around the rim against you, that's like what guards give up. Like, that is really, really bad. So he needs to kind of raise his defensive level a little bit for us. And yeah, like, I mean, what percentage of his shots are threes at this point? 80? I mean, it's probably 85% of his shots are threes. So if the three is not falling for Al in the regular season, because we just don't put the miles on him to like run high screen and roll and go in the short roll or like play make out of we just don't do that with him in the regular season, and we shouldn't. So he needs to make his threes. And my concern, Ben, did you notice the finger cast or whatever the hell he had on the right? How worried are you about that? Because Norval in the chat says, I think his finger is cooked, honestly. Please, God, no.
He's so old that may never heal. That could just be what it is for the rest of his, like, the short remainder of his life at 38 years old.
Ben.
I'm concerned. I'm very concerned. He was fingering that finger regularly throughout the night last night. So
beautifully said.
Thank you, eloquent as always. It's something that we'll be keeping an eye on. But put that finger on ice. Put it where it needs to go for healing to occur. And we'll leave it there. But I will say with Al, like, he's so old at this point, no offense, but he's not going to be the guy, I think, to give like the momentum push to push us, to heave us, if you will, out of this slump. He's going to like catch on. He's going to get on that moving train that sort of, initiated by somebody else. So while he's number 3 right now, like, I don't necessarily put him at fault. He's just like symptomatically, like, the contagiousness of the slump has reached Al Horford at this point in the season, unfortunately. Now, who are in our top 2 of the player slump rankings? Rather, you're going to have to stick around to find out. But first, a quick word from our friends over at Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best way to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. Prize Picks puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I can get my money in as quick as 15 minutes. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5 cash. You don't even need to win to receive that $50 bonus. It is guaranteed. Think Steph Curry will get more than 5 3-pointers next week, Giannis for more than 35 points. Cook up hot takes with your friends and win real money this basketball season when you and your crew run your game on Prize Picks. I'm a big fan of Prize Picks. It's just such an easy way of adding a bit of spice to your hoops viewing experience. Just pick more or less on various player stats. For me right now, that would be more on Jason Tatum rebounds. Always, it was engaged on the boards again last night against the Raptors. Download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. Now, back to the rankings, Spoonie. Shout out Prize Picks. Shout out CLNS. Number 2. Do you want to start with this one, Spoons?
Sure. Jaylen Brown. Okay. This is where the hope comes in. I was very harsh on Jaylen last night, and I think all of it was absolutely justified. 32% from 3 in the last 10 games, which is like kind of what a season average is. 20% in the last 5 games. 2.8 turnovers per game. in the past 5 games. He's fine around the rim. He's 2 of 14 from short mid-range in the last 5 games. 28% on pull-up jumpers in the last 10 games. That is Jaylen Brown's superpower. The fact that he is so athletic that he can stop, pull up from anywhere, and make it. Whether it's from 3, whether it's from mid-range, or he can get all the way down to the rim. When he is shooting that poorly on mid-range jumpers, it eliminates that from his sort of arsenal, which makes him much, much easier to guard. He's passing 28 times a game in the last 10 games. That's it. 28 passes. He's at around 33 for the season, which obviously includes this recent downtick. So he's probably around 34, 33 for the season. 5 passes a game doesn't seem like a lot, but if you don't pass, there's only 2 ways to end a possession. You turn it over or you shoot. And he's not shooting it very well, and we certainly don't want him to turn it over. So I think ultimately what it comes down to with Jaylen, because it's not his court vision. He's reading the game at the highest level he ever has. His passing has been great. Great. He is pressing, and he is trying to get himself going. And I feel like he's overthinking things. And when Jaylen Brown is at his best, it's when he's in I don't give a fuck mode. When he pulls up from 30 because he's on a heater. When he puts his shoulder into you, it takes 3 power dribbles and just powers you into the basket and finishes over you. And it seems like he's not playing with confidence, and we're not seeing stuff like that from him. I believe in Jaylen Brown. I think he's about to turn this around, and I think we're going to see like evil Jaylen in the positive way. Like he's impossibly horrible to play against, like fighting the devil. Like, oh, we might as well give up. It's the fucking devil.
Yeah.
I think he's going to come back around because he can't continue to play like this. He's way, way, way too good of a player. He also needs to reconnect on defense. I don't know what's going on with him. It just like, he just seems like he's not quite sure of what he should be doing possession to possession on defense. He needs to fix that, because that, to me, was Jaylen's biggest improvement last season, is he became a borderline elite defensive player. And that is so damn valuable when you pair him next to Tatum, who is also a borderline elite defensive player. So I think this is the nadir for Jaylen Brown's season, maybe his career, insofar as like how he's playing day to day. And I think he's going to lift himself up from the ashes. And I think we're going to get a ridiculous stretch out of JB coming up here soon.
Yeah, dude. I hope you're right. This is like maybe like the thing that I'm laying awake worrying about the most with Jaylen Brown, because you know how a couple of years ago, Jaylen and JT kind of took on this like tandem leadership approach. And for Jaylen, his aspect of leadership is like emotional leader, vibes leader, like rally the troops, like lead from in front, and like JT is kind of like this general, like back sitting on a horse, like behind the cavalry, like sort of calling out strategically. Yeah. At least that's the very stupid way that I view it personally. So Jaylen Brown, like he kind of does need to find a way to lift himself out of this funk in order to lead the rest of the team out of it as well. And like one of the pillars of truth for this Celtics team is like that the defense is the foundation. So if you're going to aim the repairs anywhere, it needs to be at that foundation. It needs to be at the defense. And I firmly believe, it sounds like you do as well, Spoonie, that like the offense will solve itself if you solve the defensive problems. And I forgot to upload this clip before we got started, but Nate on Twitter had a really good film breakdown of the defensive issues last night. And unfortunately, Jaylen Brown is like front and center of the majority of those defensive lapses, where he's just like blowing switches. He's going over screens when he's meant to go under, or vice versa. He's closing out too hard and like taking himself out of the play, like borderline Luka stuff from the finals at times, which is shocking and jarring. But just, we know physically he's on a completely different playing field to Luka. So like it's obviously a mental thing for Jason Tatum to be playing that low level of defense right now. And yeah, like it's either going to go one of 2 ways. He's just going to keep playing this way and we're going to lose in like the second or third round, or he's going to figure it out, which I would bet my house on. And we're going to figure it out, and we're going to go on another deep, potentially finals championship winning run as well. So this is like the core issue, I think, where Jaylen Brown needs to find a way to individually pull himself out of this slump for the rest of the team too. Could have made number 1 in these rankings because of that. We'll get to why he isn't in a second. But definitely some shocking visuals from Jaylen Brown these past 5 games or so. So need something from him.
Yeah, for sure. And what I think is kind of interesting is that last year Jalen took it upon himself to be sort of the leader on defense, like you described. And like, he's the guy who brought the energy night to night. He's the guy who brought the intent. That's just never going to be Tatum. And you kind of have to work around that when he's your best player. And Jalen is good enough. He is the second best player on the team to kind of take that more vocal leadership role from JT and have the team listen to him. That was kind of the problem with Smart. He was doing that, and everybody's like, bro, you're not even better than Derek White. What's going on here?
Yes.
Whereas JB's not that. And last year it felt like night in, night out, we got at least Jalen was locked in. Maybe not everybody was, but then he was holding people accountable when they were not locked in. Now he's the main culprit of this not being locked in on the defensive end. And it's in there, man. Like, it's in him to play high-level defense. We saw it for an entire season, for an entire playoff run. We've seen it at times this year. And I think, he needs to take that leadership role. He needs to take it and just kind of flip where the energy needs to shift for this season. We need another tweet, JB.
Yeah.
And bring it. And just bring it on the defensive end. And you're right. Like, the offense will fix. He's not going to shoot 28% on pull-ups for the rest of the season. Like, he's too good. It's not going to happen. Fix the defense, and then you get out in transition. You get easy baskets. At one point last night, it was 19-2 in transition points in the Raptors' favor. Like, it's hard to win a game like that.
That's insane.
Yeah.
Jimmy N in the chat, sad pod alert. Can't remember feeling this way in a while. We mentioned this up the top, Spoon, but like, the qualifier on all of these is like, we believe it will be fine.
Oh, yeah.
Like, this is the current state of play, current state of affairs. It does add a layer of intrigue to the season in that it's not just like, well, they're amazing again, 70 wins, championship, boom. Like, no point watching. At least now, as tough as it is watching these games, like, I tuned in last night being like, is this going to be the game where they like show themselves again and figure it out? Like, every game is kind of like that going into it. And then, of course, the sort of cascading disappointment that unfortunately ensues. But it is at least interesting, I think, from an intriguing standpoint, to follow this team's journey to potentially a second title. So all optimism. It just sucks right now, but we do believe they'll get out of it, which I guess leads us to our number one slumpiest slumper on the Celtics right now, Spoonie. Another one that's painful to say, but Derek White, 10% from three in the past 5 games. I think, like, I haven't got this stat, but when I checked yesterday, it was like roughly 20% in the last 10. And I mentioned this on that pod that I mentioned that we did right after, I think it was New Year's Day or the 2nd of January. And I mentioned it then that Derek White has some body language issues, lost confidence issues, very much still exhibiting those body language issues right now. Last night, like, even when he made a shot, he like kind of looked up to the heavens like, thank fuck, I can actually make a three. But for the most part, he's hanging his head. It's very obvious because of the sheen that sort of dances off of it with the lighting above the court there and the epic boldness. But it's tough right now for Derek White fans.
It feels inexplicable that, like, he was Mr. Consistent for us for so long, and Derek, Pop said it, is like, he doesn't realize how good he is. To me, like, this feels like a spiraling disaster waiting to happen here if he doesn't nip this in the bud. What's weird, though, is, like, before these 5 games, he went 6 of 12 against Houston and 5 of 10 against Minnesota and 3 of 3 against Toronto. So, like, it's not that long ago that he shot like 65% in 3 straight games, right? So
yeah.
I do think this is just a slump. But the only thing that concerns me, as you said, is the body language stuff, because we know Derek has always dealt a little bit with like the confidence issues. Part of his journey has always been like, nobody ever thought he was good enough. And he is good enough. We really, really need him, because I love Drew Holiday, and Drew is not on this list, but he's not the same type of player he was in Milwaukee. Like, he just can't carry the offensive load. He can't take the offensive load off the Jays' back. Mm-hmm. Derek White can and has for large portions of this season. And to see him like this, like, when's the last goofy-footed floater he made? Like, when's the last time he like tried to like, he was dunking fairly regularly for a while there. Like, in the playoffs, he's yamming on Bam. And then like now he seems afraid to put the ball on the floor, and he is our point guard. So that is a problem. I think he just needs to see some shots go down. And I think like Jalen, he needs to re-engage on the defensive end. Because that is where Derek White is a defensive player first, and I think he can build his confidence. A couple times the Raptors hit some like weird floaters over him, and immediately head drop, shoulders dipped. And it's like, dude, you forced him into a tough shot and they made it. Like, you can't let that affect how into this game you are. And I feel like he's letting sort of the negatives pile up and overwhelm him a little bit. He just needs another one of those games where he's like 5 of 7 from 3 and has 2 blocks and just looks awesome against like Trae Young or something like that. So I think Derek will be back, but good Lord, it has been ugly. Like ugly. Like he's hurting the team pretty severely right now. And it really pains me to say that, but like he was awful last night and has been pretty awful for like 2 weeks now. And he's super important. When you have one of your best players playing like that, it's hard to win games.
Yeah, and he was the number one recipient of those like late game JT kickouts and was just not able to do anything good with those at all. And it's so jarring, and he's number one here because for so long it was like, no matter what, Derek White will always be Derek White. He'll always be this pillar of stability. He'll always be awesome. We'll always be able to rely on him. And he's like, aside from JT, maybe the number 2 guy that you want out there in crunch time situations because you know that he's always going to make winning plays. Now he's getting like benched essentially in favor of Peyton Pritchard. And Pritchard's been great, nothing against him, but just to see, you know, that pendulum swing out of the favorable direction with Derek White is terrifying, and I never would have predicted it in all of my life and all of my years. So again, with JB, like if I had to bet, I would absolutely bet the house on the fact that Derek White will find it. I think like of all these guys, he could use some love from the fan base. Like if you, obviously I in Australia am nowhere near TD Garden, but we need some pro Derek White signs. We need some like, you'll be okay, mate. I don't know. Obviously I'm not a good writer of pro Derek White signs, but we need some love aimed at Derek White, either via Twitter or directly there in TD Garden. I think that he would respond nicely to that. Honorable mentions. Kristaps Porzingis, don't have to hang on this too much, but for the spacing and I think some defensive reasons, if he finds himself out on the perimeter, this is nothing new, but it's tough out there for KP as he sort of continues to ramp up physically around the rim, no problem. And he is improving at like following the defender back towards the rim and like recovering and blocking, or at least like defending quite well. Drew Holiday, honorable mention as well. You kind of touched on it as well. Like it's diminishing returns each season at this point in most players' career. And those returns are clearly diminished in the case of like Drew Holiday in 2025.
Yeah, for sure. Real quick, Jimmy N said Derek White threes in the fourth were pretty much guaranteed. For the first 2 months of this season, he shot 50% on threes in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
Now, I don't even want to check what it is since then, but but yeah, I will say, I think I've been pretty critical of KP's offensive process. I thought last night he started to see the light a little bit. He had one play, I think it was with Derek, where Derek threw it into him in the high post, and he just touch passed it right back to Derek White for a wide open 3. He missed it, but that's the type of shit with KP's gravity, especially in that high post. We can like run the offense around him if he's willing to move the ball, if he's willing to be more unselfish. I feel like when he first came back, he was just trying to force it like, I'm the cheat code. Here I go. Give me the ball, and I'm going to score 10 straight from the high post. Like, that's a difficult shot. Great players at that shot shoot like 46, 47%. Like, it is not good offense. It's great offense when there's 7 seconds on the shot clock and you need to find something. But like KP should be really operating in those spots as a playmaker first, in my opinion. Like, get the mismatch, help comes, find somebody, drive and kick, game starts, boom, boom, boom. So, and I think he's starting to get back to that. He had a really nice backdoor to Jaylen Brown last night too. So, but yeah, KP's getting done no favors with Mazzulla putting him in this zone and requiring him to like eke out to the corners and get back to protect the rim. Like, that you're asking him to fail. I think he's been fine in drop. Like, drop has its weaknesses, especially against guys who are making pull-up shots. So, but But yeah, he can't play that position in the zone, so we should probably just stop. And Drew, I mean, the shot's coming back, which I think is a good thing. We really need him to be an elite shooter again because nobody else can make a shot. So for the love of God, Drew, please get it back. Part of me just thinks like there's going to be like one day it's just going to flip and we're just going to start making sure. We're shooting 33% on open threes and we create the second most in the NBA over the last 15 games. That's insane. 33%. That's horrible on open threes. So I think Drew kind of is what he is. The shot just needs to go down. He's good for a bully ball layup or two every game. He's been solid for the most part. It's just the shot.
Yeah, he's back up to 37.5% from three in the past 10 games, whereas he's only 33.7 like for the season. So he's at least trending in the right direction. He just trended his way out of the top 5 slump rankings here. So good for Drew Holiday. Let's kick off the first couple of like team execution holistic rankings here, and then we'll pause for an ad break. But number 6 team. So this is like looking at the whole team as a whole. Like obviously a team slump is made out of individual players slumping. As a result of that, there's some like very like schematic, strategic things that are experiencing their own internal slumps as well. So number 6, spacing. This like kind of goes back to the KP conversation as well. So like to start the game last night, there was a lot of 5 out and a lot of that bad spacing with players sort of clumsily bundled up in one sort of corner of the court. And then we had a timeout once we went down, essentially by double digits. We come out and like the first couple of plays, we get the ball to KP like going towards the rim, or like we get it to him on the block, and then we like create offense out of that. And it just looks so much more functional and organized and logical in terms of like using the personnel you have out there in a way that is conducive to bucket getting. And I think if we see a little bit more of utilization of KP in that sense, then our spacing will make a lot more sense visually on screen. But it feels like 5 out, which worked a lot last year, we're just like not getting anything going in that sense. So would you agree with that, Spoonie, or what else would you say about the spacing?
Yeah, so certainly it's looked bad at times for sure, especially, yeah, you're right, with KP out there. I like 5 out, but you can't play 5 out and not run anything. Like that seems to me is the problem. It's like, okay, we've got 5 out, here you go, Tatum, and like that's it. Or like, okay, we're 5 out. Now KP goes to the high post while somebody's trying to get downhill and drags a defender. Oh, and somebody's cutting out of the corner into the drive, into KP, and it's just like a jumbled mess. It seems like we're trying to cut more when like KP is already occupying those spots on the court. And then you're losing your corner spacing, things like that. So they just look incredibly out of sync. Like if you're going to play 5 out, run high screen and roll with KP and let him roll to the rim. Like there you go. But it just seems like he pops and then we've got KP and Derek White standing next to each other. The entire defense is set, playing essentially a zone against a Jason Tatum isolation. And then we grind to a halt, and it looks like that 2023 team at times. So, yeah, it's been really, really bad. I do think this is something that those fundamentals are so beaten to them. I think they're just getting used to KP being back and like where he occupies space. We saw Drew, I think, in the dunker a couple times last night. More of that, please. If you're going to space KP, then put Drew in the dunker spot. We won the finals with that exact alignment. So they'll sort it out. But KP is like, he's a high volume, unique player. He's tough to play with, not in like a negative way, just in like, he demands the ball and he demands it in unique places. And they are struggling right now with that.
Yeah, just even getting him the ball on the block, like going away from 5 out, but just classic, like put the big man on the block and like let him go to work or at least run actions off of that. It just seems like and this is nothing new, but our ability to make a fucking entry pass to one of the tallest humans on the planet is so like diminished. Brutal. And it seems like it's just so hard and anytime we do make a post-entry pass, it's so telegraphed that like you almost feel like you could jump into the screen and steal the pass yourself. So long way to go there. I know it wasn't necessarily our forte last year, but like we made it work and they're just so far from that. That goes back to what you were saying. Like it's just a matter of reintegrating KP and like the guys getting used to his presence on the court. Like I think that's something that will come back and at least find its level and occur at an average success rate. But right now it's brutal out there. Number 5 in the team execution rankings. closing out way too hard on 3-point shooters, which is inspired by you and Jake's conversation right after the game last night, where like I personally think that this is an extremely flawed attempt at like an effort demonstration on court, where it's like, look how hard I'm closing out. I'm getting out there. I'm getting a hand on his face. I'm getting a hand up. Look at all the effort I'm exhibiting defensively. What you're really doing is just allowing the player to pump fake you out of the play entirely, go immediately 5-on-4, crack your perimeter defense and either get to the bucket or get your defense in rotation and make a pass out to a wide open shooter. We saw that time and time again last night. We've seen that many times throughout this sort of 10-game slump, and it's disgusting, and they need to stop doing it, Spoonie.
And not only that, if the guy does take the three, you're not in the play to rebound if he does happen to miss. And we gave up a bunch of offensive rebounds like that too. Do you know what the Raptors shot from three last night, Ben?
I don't want to know.
32.4%.
What?
Why the fuck are you flying out to them like they're 5 Steph Currys? They're
it's high
shooting
effort.
under 33% from three. Like they won because we flew out to them and they walked to the hoop and dumped it off to Jakob Poeltl every time. Like there is no reason to hard close on Jamal Shed. I'm sorry. Let him shoot. It's fine. He'll probably make a couple. Scotty Barnes. You're closing out on Scotty Barnes. Scotty Barnes like that. It doesn't make any sense. There's no way it's coaching. And I think you're right. They're just like, shit, I blew another defensive assignment. I better get my ass out there as fast as I can so it doesn't look bad. And then it just looks way worse. Like, just stop. And they've done this at times in the past when they're not locked in mentally. And like, this is something that happens to them. Okay, never mind. I was going to say something else, but I see it's on our list, so I'll just shut up there. But like, and this is such an easy fix that it is so frustrating to me that they continue to do it. Like, hands up, close out under control. There you go. If they make the shot, they make the shot. Whatever. Don't blow the rotation next time, or don't get blown by so you have to help and then there's a kick out. Like, play better defense and then you'll never have to do this.
Yeah, we've been qualifying every negative point with like, it's okay, this is super easily fixed. This may be the most easily fixed point of everything that we cover on this show tonight. So get on it, Celtics. We're going to come back in a moment and do the top 4 team execution slump rankings. But first, Spoonie, I'll cue up this B-reel for you. A quick word from our friends over at Game Time.
There's nothing better than playoff football, getting to see the best players in gridiron history like John Kitna and TJ Yeldon, huck it, chuck it to see who the best team in the NFL is. Unfortunately, that answer is probably the Chiefs, but that doesn't make playoff games any less fun. There's no better way to grab tickets to a football game or any event than Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you not only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. WVU basketball, man, 12-4. We got a lot of injuries. Monster game. Number 3 Iowa State coming to Morgantown this weekend. The best way to get there or any game is Game Time. You just hop on the app, search for the game or team you're looking for. Super easy. You're shown all the available tickets and all the best deals right on your phone. Their curated deals make it even easier to find the best seats at the best prices, and maybe my favorite feature is the seat view. It'll show you exactly what it looks like from any seat before you buy. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time.
Shout out Game Time. Also, hit that like button. There's a bunch of you here. We're so close to 10,000 subscribers on the First of the Four YouTube channel. It's really just taking it one subscriber at a time. It's a slow leap from 9,900 to 10,000 apparently. So if you're here, you like the channel, you like Celtics content, even if you don't want to watch the show on a regular basis, you're telling your algorithm, please give me more Celtics content. So definitely benefit you to subscribe and hit that like button. We'd really appreciate it. Number 4. Lack of crispness and synchronicity on offensive actions. I think this is an obvious one. It is a painful one and a worthy one in the rankings here. I'll use an example of flare screens, which is like a short video that we put out recently, where last year, like the timing of the screener coming up while the like catcher slash shooter like drifts out to the wing for the catch. It was seamless. Like looking at it, it was all one motion. Now it's really like jagged, where the sort of middle, the screener and a flare screen action will sort of gradually mosey on up to the top of the 3-point line. And then the shooter will sort of just in a separate motion drift out to the wing. And that pass then just gets lollipopped up to them. And it's such an obvious action that we're running, let alone like the good version of that is probably available from a scouting perspective. And then we're putting together this half-assed version execution wise on the court. That's just one example in like my limited X's and O's knowledge where that's clearly exhibited on the court, Spoonie, but there's no crispness. There's no synchronicity. We talked about the lack of synchronicity in the defense. It's exhibiting itself offensively as well. It's fucking painful to watch, man.
Yeah. We're not setting good screens right now, and players are not getting in and out of those screens with any type of pace. They're not getting downhill off those. Like, where are the Jaylen Brown coming off a pin down on his right hand with a full head of steam to the teeth of the deep? That's like what his game was. Like, I don't remember a single one of those last night. And I wonder if Joe's just experimenting, trying to get these dudes to play in uncomfortable ways that they're not used to. But the flare screens is a great one because teams are cheating it big time because we run it so often. So you know what you do there? You curl it and you back cut them, which we do rarely, occasionally. Pritchard does it all the time. He's actually really good at it. He's just so small. It's hard to like get a pass to him. But it just seems like we're like going through the motions with our offensive sets instead of running stuff. We had a great set last night. No surprise. It involved Al Horford, I think Luke Cornett, and Peyton Pritchard. 3 dudes who are going to play hard and set good screens. It was a twirl action, double stagger screens with Pritchard setting the down screen for Horford, and then he and Horford replace. So Horford like curls around Pritchard, sets a screen, Pritchard pops out and gets off of his screen, wide open 3, he buries it. More of stuff like that. It seems like we're like, okay, we get into a flare, and now that's a pick and roll, and now the help comes there. Oh, he didn't help. I guess I have. Oh, wait a second. Oh no, there's a rim protect. Like, it just seems like we're totally walking through our offensive sets, and we're not being creative. Like the read and react stuff that we used to do last season is not. And this hasn't been all year. Like until like the middle of December, they were still fucking awesome.
Yeah.
And part of me thinks like they're probably just a little bit bored and whatever. They won the title. Like they'll show up pretty soon here. But it's just mental execution and effort to like set good screens, get in and out of stuff fast, and play the right way. And man, like it seems like they're not going one more pass. They're taking the shot before the great shot. They're taking the decent or solid shot instead of the great shot, and they're settling. And they just didn't do that last season.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people call out Joe Mazzulla as well. It's like typical with poor performing teams, people just sort of jump straight down the coach's throat and use them as the scapegoat. But you guys touched on it last night. Like, I don't think that Joe Mazzulla is like coaching these guys to be lazy or coaching these guys to like just lackadaisically run through their sets, or I don't think he's instructing them to miss wide open threes, Spoonie. But you know, one of the best things about our team dynamic and the dynamic between the players and the coaching staff last year was like, yes, we had our playbook, but they were instructed to, you mentioned it, to read and react. And if an opportunity presented itself in the moment, you guys are all savvy veterans with a plethora of NBA experience behind you, like react in that moment and you have the freedom to like generate buckets based on what the defense gives you. That was like the freedom to operate in that way is what made watching this team so magical last year. And it's like they're just not reverting to that. They're not actually taking up those opportunities that are given to them by the opposing defense and the coaching staff as well. And it's like kind of boring. I know that people complain about like the 3-point shooting volume being boring. The team just like not playing basketball to the full extent of their talent and capabilities. That's fucking boring to me. I'd really like to see them get out of this funk and just operate in the way that we know them to be able to.
Yeah, there's no creativity, I think is what it boils down to. It's like, it just felt like the Jays especially were free to express themselves on the court, off ball especially too. Like Tatum, a lot of what he's doing when he's not on the ball is standing like almost at half court. Like, there were multiple possessions in the fourth quarter where he's like 36 feet from the hoop. What you doing there? I mean, like, yeah, we want to maintain spacing. That's a little too far away to be any threat. You're basically just allowing them to play 4-on-5 on defense. And like, where's the Tatum setting the ball screen and in the short roll? Like, did he do that once in the fourth quarter? I don't think so. So part of me thinks like Joe is kind of playing cat and mouse. Belichick, maybe this is coping hard, but this is something like we know it's there. We know they can do it. They just did it for the first 2.5 months of the season. It'll probably come back, but you're right. Right now, it is tough to fucking watch some of these possessions, man.
Yeah, dude, creating out of the short roll was such a staple last year. And like it was read and react. Like just the way that teams were defending our pick and roll, like the way they were, the coverages they were throwing at us, it was obvious to roll into that pocket of space and then create out of that. And it's like, we're not even thinking that way anymore. It's very frustrating. But what am I saying? Everyone already knows and feels this. So we've got to rush through the rest of these because I have another commitment, 14 minutes from now. So let's rush through these. So number 3, overhelping on drives, especially now with our lanky Latvian friend waiting at the rim. We're helping way off corner shooters, for example, to help like contain those drives to the rim. I think like stunt, dig, sure, but like to completely leave your man seems unnecessary now that we have the nation of Latvia waiting for them at the rim. Spoonie, like is the superpower of our starting 5 not that ability to switch 1 through 5 or at least 1 through 4 and like just defend everyone straight up? It seems this overhelp thing, it's sort of symptomatic of everything else that we've already talked about. But it's not the Celtics basketball I've come to know and love in the past year or so.
Tatum is extraordinarily guilty of overhelping. And again, it's laziness. It's hard to stunt and get back and stunt and get back and stunt. It's a lot easier to just like get over there and like, at least they're not making a layup, you know? But then it puts you in rotation and you're fucked. And even the Raptors look good. So, I think it's execution. KP, I think, is chasing blocks a little bit too much for my taste as well. There are a few times where I think he got over to help on a drive that he absolutely didn't need to, and somebody was there for an offensive rebound because he pulled himself out of position. So, man, the overhelping, that's been an issue with this team, and you're exactly right. There's like, dude, if somebody makes a layup over Drew Holiday, like tip your cap and move it along. Like this team is good enough that like, you get cracked off the dribble 1 or 2 times a quarter. Like that's not the end of the world. What is the end of the world is every time they get near the paint, somebody helps off a shooter and then you're in rotation every single possession. That's way more of a problem. So please stop. This is, to me, is exactly like the closing out hard, the stupid closeouts, like very, very, very fixable.
Yeah, again, very fixable, which is the positive takeaway. We promised to spread the positive vibes, and I guess just very consistently after every negative thing we say here, we say this can be fixed and should be fixed and likely will be fixed in the very near future. Number 2, fourth quarters overall, and I'm just going to completely delegate to Greeny, friend of the show, Dan Greenberg of Barstool Sports on Twitter here. His tweet from last night or earlier today, perhaps. Celtics fourth quarters in their 12 losses this season. Offensive rating, 102.4, not good. Defensive rating, 130.3, very not good. Net rating, -28. True shooting, 50.8. 28th ranked offense, 29th ranked defense, 30th ranked net rating, 30th ranked true shooting. Fourth quarter, Spoonie, winning time, like by far the worst team in the league.
Yeah. Okay. So Jason Tatum is playing 11.2 minutes per game in the third quarter. Please substitute 2 of those minutes and bring him in earlier in the fourth quarter. He didn't get in till like 5:30 left in this game. And it's like,
too late.
It's a 12-point game. It's like, it's basically lost. And I've lodged this complaint multiple times this season where I think Joe needs to do a lot better job of understanding sort of the ebb and flow of the game. And like, look, if somebody goes on that run in the third quarter, well, then you have the entire fourth quarter to get it back. If they go on that run at the beginning of the fourth quarter, then you lose the game because there is no more time to get it back. So, like, why are we playing Tatum for this entire third quarter and then letting him sit on the bench for 7 minutes in the most important quarter of the game? It makes absolutely no fucking sense to me. And I think part of this is they're just missing shots. Like there's been some bad fourth quarters I've gone back and watched, and the looks they've gotten were much better than I remembered when I initially watched the game. And I think defensively, the ball pressure just needs to step it up in some of these fourth quarters. Like it feels like, I don't know if lazy, they don't want to get beat off the dribble, I think is probably what it is. But you got to make guys uncomfortable. Like, again, if you get beat once in a while, that's okay if you're making them uncomfortable for the six of the other 8 possessions. I don't know why I picked 6 out of 8, but here we go. So, like, get the ball pressure, up the ball pressure. What about some of these, like, full court presses and 3/4 court presses we've had where like Pritchard's hounding guys in the fourth quarter, wearing them out, making things difficult, starting possessions with 15 seconds on the shot. I haven't seen any of that this season, really, and especially not in these terrible fourth quarters. So bring Tatum back earlier and up the ball pressure for the love of God.
Yeah, that's where you really start to think, like, are they like notably trying to preserve themselves in some way by not going to these full court presses? And then, like, are there many other iterations of that on both sides of the ball that we're just not privy to, where they're like, okay, let's run it 75% speed so that when we get to June, based on everything that's happened in the past year, including the Olympics and like busy off seasons, that we actually have something left in the tank. I think that's like an easy thing to like tell yourself at night when you're lying awake worrying about the Celtics. Like, they've got it in there, they're just not trying as hard, and they're like, in a way, trying hard to not try hard in like the smartest, most like Joe Mazzulla like 4D chess way possible. Maybe there's just been too much shit on the court now to truly believe that, or like maybe there was a world where that was the initial approach and they've just like fallen into some really bad habits as a result. But again, very fixable in the fourth quarter. Just go back to last year's rotations. They worked. We won a fucking championship.
Right? Jalen in the entire first quarter, Tatum with the bench to start the second quarter. It won us a championship. Yes. Why did he change it? It doesn't make any sense.
It's infuriating. Again, very fixable. Number 1, effort. And effort is number 1 because it really is the overarching theme. I know it's probably a cop-out. There's probably some people shaking their heads right now. But like the elevator pitch for all of the above, everything we've just talked about, if you had 30 seconds to explain what the fuck is going on with the Celtics, you would say effort, I think. Like, this team, they know what success looks like. They know the championship product. And it's extremely hard to manufacture motivation. Like, they still have the 3rd best record in the league. They head up to Toronto. It's probably, I would imagine, cold as fuck there this time of year.
Yes.
Like, they're there for a night or 2 tops. You got to go in there and play one of the worst teams in the league, and you're probably somewhat rightfully thinking we could go half-assed and win this game. We blew them out by like near record amount of points last time we saw them. Like, let's not really think too hard or try this hard in this game. Problem is, it's been happening for a while now, which is why we're having this conversation. But the effort wasn't there last night. I understand the lack of manufacturable motivation there, but like, you do have to find some motivation at some point. The effort does have to return so that you're a well-positioned team seeding wise, like heading into the postseason, and so that you've rebuilt those good habits.
I have the solution to this. Play deeper into your bench. Let guys like Jordan Walsh play. We've seen Neemias Queta impact games in a positive way. This is the exact type of game you should go deep into your bench. Toronto is beating you with effort and playing really hard. And OU, it's not just effort, it's intentionality. Totally agree. It's mental execution. It's mental focus is a big part of it as well. But like, play Jordan Walsh. See what happens. Like, these type of effort guys, like your deep bench, 1, they need minutes to develop. And 2, like, they can steal you 3 minutes and win you 3 minutes with just straight hustle and making a 3, or like Queta gets some offensive rebounds, and they're going to bring it and they're going to wear out the opposing team. Like, I feel like Joe's rotation is just a little too short right now. It's January. Like, now is the time to dig into we're losing anyway. You might as well get some of these guys some minutes, see what they can do. And they're going to play their balls off. And sometimes that's just what you need in Toronto in January. You need somebody to bring the effort level of the whole team up. And that shit is infectious. I don't know if you've ever played basketball with somebody who's playing their balls off. You're like, yeah, let's go, man. I'm going to do that too. So get a little deeper into the bench, Joe. Like, enough experimenting with the schemes and like the starters rotations. Experiment with the deep bench guys. Give me Drew Peterson.
Please, absolutely, Drew Peterson. He's been fucking killing it in admittedly garbage time minutes. But yeah, why not? Why not a little bit of a little foot here, as it were. Shout out to our guy Jake, who's probably out there. I was just going to say, I'm just like scrolling through the images that we've got saved in StreamYard now. But shout out to our guy Jake, who's like clearly out there as the is it the vibes minister, the
Zen
monk,
master,
Zen master of Celtics greatness and good juju out there conjuring up the good vibes right now. I do want to kick to the Zach Lowe tweet to close, Spoonie. But what do you got for us?
I was just going to say Joseph Palmieri, Tillman, Kata, Springer, anybody, not Springer. Anyone other than Springer. Anyway, go ahead, man.
Got to draw the line somewhere.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Exactly. I have standards.
Zach Lowe popped up on social media yesterday, and it was very timely for Celtics fans. Yeah, he led with a tweet, quote, I'm not worried about the Celtics yet. This stretch reeks of mid-season malaise, but it is very, very important to note that they deserve to lose when they wear the hideous jerseys they wore last night. The basketball gods took note. I think that's a sound point. And he followed it up with, biggest reason for any Celtics anxiety is the top of the East / path to the finals looks much harder than last season. Beyond that, and aside from championship hangover, a few guys not shooting as well, plus some nights where they could use one or more versatile perimeter defenders would be very handy. Not worried at all, essentially, is how the tweet ended. So I think Zach Lowe speaks the truth there, and I think it's like a very calming, message that he's put out there for all of us at a time where like we don't get a lot of Zach Lowe in our lives. So for him to rear his head up and deliver that message, factual message, I will say, about the Celtics is very timely indeed.
Yes, very soothing. Thank you, Zach Lowe. And ultimately, like, we're psychos. Like, if you're listening to this podcast, I know Ben and I and Jake, we watch these games very intently. We are emotionally invested. It's hard to detach yourself and be objective when they just like don't bring it. And then somebody like Zach Lowe is like, yeah, of course they're like not trying as hard.
Okay.
Like they won the title. They know what they need to do in the playoffs. Like, yeah, you don't want them to try as hard. And like, I get that rationally, but emotionally, I just can't bring myself to watch the games with that in mind. So I'm glad Zach sort of gave us all a little bit of objectivity, a little bit of calm us down just a little bit. And he's 100% right. Doesn't make it any easier to watch.
Yeah, I really needed to hear that or read it, or however you want to describe it. So thank you, Zach Lowe. I hope you're back in the pod sphere very soon. In the meantime, that's going to do it for this one. Thank you so much for joining us. We're back at it tomorrow. We'll be live here on YouTube right after Celtics v Magic. We've had a quiet period over the holiday break, but we're ramping it back up here. We're bringing the good vibes, and I think that's going to permeate through the whole Boston Celtics organization. We'll see. Wayne Spoonie, love your work, man. Until next time, go Celts.